Hello, I'm Tammy C., and this is History in the Making, a fresh look at the current events and how these events are making history and our future. Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States, was voted into office with President Joseph Biden in November 2020 and sworn into office on January 20th, 2021, as the first woman, first African Asian Indian American Vice President. VP Harris has broken the political office glass ceiling for the first time in the history of the United States. Many countries, including our allies and even poor countries, have had women political leaders decades ago, such as India in 1934 and Sri Lanka in 1960. And the UK with Margaret Thatcher in 1979 to 1990, and Iceland in 1980, the first female premier in France in 1991, and the first female prime minister in Bangladesh in 1991 to 1996, and again in 2001 to 2006. And of course, Angela Merkel, the first female chancellor of Germany in 2005. Although VP Kamala Harris is not in the highest office of the United States, she is the first to break the barrier for holding such a high executive office. We'll be analyzing the article, Harris Has the Potential to Change the Face of U.S. Politics. This article is published by Political, a magazine in print and published electronically. The link to this article is in the comments below. Political is a slightly leading left publication with factual reporting history, and is considered to be opinion-based in most of its publications. As we can see here in the political bias chart from all slides, we can check the references below. The Political is slightly less left bias and a reliable news source. Check the comments below for the news source to find out where your political news sources fall on the political bias spectrum from all slides. This article was published on January 7, 2020 at 2:52 p.m. Eastern Time by the magazine's editors, and right after the final count of the Electoral College votes. The endorsements came before and after the election. The win of Biden-Harris ticket means hope and excitement for many people. Here are some of the endorsements and comments from the people quoted in the Political article. She will be a perpetual reminder not to neglect the forgotten base, says Tara W. Hunter, who is a professor of history and African American studies at Princeton University. Tara Hunter notes that women of color first, with Charlotte Bass of California, became the first Black woman to be nominated to any national party in 1952. 20 years later, in 1972, Congressman Chisholm of New York broke another barrier as the first Black woman to run for president on a major party ticket. She'll be the first. She should assemble her own foreign policy team, says Anne Marie Slaughter, of the CEO of New America, and serves as the Director of Policy and Planning for the U.S. Department of State, the first woman to hold that position. The Biden-Harris victory chips away at the perception that female candidates face systematic disadvantages, declares Jennifer Lawrence, a professor of politics at the University of Virginia, whose research focuses on the political ambition, campaigns, and elections, media, and politics. She also goes on saying in her studies have found that women in Congress deliver more federal spending to their districts and sponsor more legislation than their male colleagues. They prioritize pertaining to women's issue. They have greater success in keeping their sponsors' bills alive longer in the legislative process. And when given the opportunity to speak about issues of their choosing during their 1-minute speeches, Congresswomen in both parties are more likely than men to speak to and about women. Women are more likely than men to participate in the social engagement activities and traditions that contribute to the social fabric of Congress, which help make the political arena a more somewhat civil and somewhat less dysfunctional place to work. Women, in other words, are good for the governing process. Quotes Lawless. Amanda Clayton, who is professor of political science at Vanderbilt University. She focuses her research on gender and politics in political institutions, representation, and political policy. She says giving Harris a leading role in the coronavirus response may give Americans somewhat needed confidence. Kimberly Peeler Allen, who is the founder of Higher Heights for America, a national organization committed to building the political power and leadership of Black women, is quoted saying, Harris will take the work she did as U.S. Senator even further, dismantling structural racism and bias. Kenesha Grant, who is professor of political science at Howard University and the author of The Great Migration and the Democratic Party, Black Voters and the Realignment of Politics is the 20th Century, says, I would like to see her do things that are clearly and specifically for and about Black Americans. Keisha N. Blaine, a professor of history at the University of Pittsburgh and the fellow of Carr's Center for Human Rights and Policies at Howard University, and author of Set the World on Fire, The Black Nationalist Women and the Global Struggle for Freedom, is quoted a new federal approach to sentencing guidelines and the use of consent decrees and drug classifications and treatment. Linda Hirschman is the author of Sister-in-Law, How Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg Went to the Supreme Court and Changed the World, is quoted, Harris knows what it's like to try and make it on your own in an unequal economy and raise a family. Amita Omara, a Democratic political strategist and former president of the Young Democrats of America, indicates Harris will be uniquely positioned to influence how the Democratic Party works and invest in organizing communities of color. Another significant outcome of her election is what it means for the future of women's candidates, says Debbie Walsh, who is director of the Center of American Women and Politics at Rutgers University. Harris will show the world what a strong woman looks like. Barbara Lee is president and founder of the Barbara Lee Family Foundation. Elizabeth Holtzman is lawyer and former Democratic congressman from New York, and author of Who Said It Was Going to Be Easy? One Woman's Life in the Political Arena, says Harris should help Biden with restoring justice to the Justice Department. Martha Craven Newsom is a philosopher, author, and distinguished professor of law and ethics at the University of Chicago, is quoted saying, she can begin to address the human rights abuses of the Hindu right in India. Natasha Timar Shamara, a professor of African American Studies and Asian American Studies at Northwestern University, endorses qualifications with the quote, Harris has special insight into the global dimensions of immigration around the world. She has spent her life fighting to protect the vulnerable and ensuring everyone has a seat at the table, says Vanita Gupta, President and CEO of Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights and former head of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. Harris knows firsthand the disparities of our criminal justice system, says Diane Ramsey Berry, who's chair of the History Department at the University of Texas at Austin and co-author of Black Women's History of the United States. Sophia A. Nelson is an American author, political strategist, opinion writer, and former House Republican Committee Counsel, says, after 247 years, this country finally has a female John Adams and two women in direct line of political succession. What a difference a day makes. As a daughter of an immigrant, she can offer experience and insight into the immigration policy in the Biden administration. Mary C. Curtis is a columnist and host of Equal Time podcast at CQ Roll Call. Harris has an opportunity to build and work with progressive voters. Tara Lindsay is a professor of women's gender sexuality studies at Ohio State University. Christian Greenridge is a playwright from Boston, Massachusetts, who wrote Milk Like Sugar and The Luck of the Irish, says, my hope is that Kamala is instrumental in insisting diversity does not start and end at the top. Harris understands the connection between the injustice of our system and the connections to inequality in health, education, and finance. Shoal Shah is a professor and founding executive director at Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University. She has served as deputy assistant to the president for Barack Obama and founded the White House Office for Social Innovation and Civic Precipitation. She may play a starring role in bringing our democracy back from collapse. Onika LeBennett is an associate professor of American Studies and Ethnicity at the University of Southern California. Harris' election may augur the dawn of rational, humane, progressive politics in the United States. Shiana is a Draper Chair at American History at the University of Connecticut and author of A Slave's Cause. The vice presidency can be a bully pit too. Joe Freeman has published 11 books, including 3 on women politics, 2 of which won political science prizes for scholarship. She has many books, of which are At Berkeley in the 60s and A Room at a Time, How Women Entered the Party Politics. Our bodies carry history, culture, and hope of 3 continents, North America, Africa, and Asia. Min-Jing Lee is author of Free Food for Millionaires and Pachinko, a National Book Award finalist. These quotes of these prominent women in influential positions not only support Harris for vice president, but giving evidentiary proof of why she is not only capable but well qualified to be vice president and president of the United States. Still, of all the women of the House representatives and senators and the national level of women and minorities are still grossly underrepresented in voting and leadership positions in this nation. Women account for 153.3 million people in the United States, over 50% of the population, yet only reflect 27% of the representation in the House of Representatives and Senate. The U.S. Senate, which only recently increased from single digits total representation of 100 seats, while in 1996 with the House of Representatives only 11% of women that same year. These endorsements from these prominent women place a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of Kamala Harris. We need to remember that everyone needs to do their part to help shift the view of